Just a quick FYI, there won't be any poker playing in this episode. I'm here in Michigan. My mom just had back surgery, so I'm kind of helping out around the house and whatnot. Trying to do what I can, which isn't really much, but just trying to help out a little bit. If you want, you could show her some love down in the comments. You know, maybe a little get well soon message, something like that. Just a thought. I just want to pop out of the house real quick. Thought I would show you guys a little bit of scenery of the sleepy little suburb that I grew up in just outside of Detroit. Pretty standard overcast Michigan gray cloudy day, but the trees look nice. Fall is happening. So it wouldn't be a proper visit to the Great Lakes State without showing you some lake action, would it? This is Lake St. Clair. This is about a couple miles from my parents' house where I grew up. Like I said, not exactly the sunniest of days today, but you get used to this sort of thing when you're in Michigan. Let's just be happy I'm not standing in a few feet of snow right now. And hey, any change from the desert is always good, right? 2 words. Pure Michigan. I thought maybe we could do a little impromptu Q&A. There was a bunch of questions that I wasn't able to get to on the last Q&A episode, so I thought we could circle back and get the rest of those answered. And there's also a couple of other questions that keep popping up, so we can get to those as well. So let's dive in. A couple of people have asked about bankroll and how much you need to play different games, how much you need to get started as a professional poker player. It's a pretty common question, and I think the reason why it's such a common question is because there's just no place to find that answer. And the reason why there is no place to find that answer is because there is no set answer, really. The answer is that everybody is different. The amount of stress that one person is willing to take on when they have downswings can be completely different from the amount of stress that another person is willing to take on. So some people are naturally going to want to have more of a cushion than other people. Some people are completely fine with having those big swings and coming close to the bottom of their bankroll threshold. So as a result, I've seen some pretty wide ranges for numbers for any stake level. So I guess on the most conservative side, I've seen, I think on Twitter, I saw Todd Brunson say, somebody asked him, how much money should you have for 1-2 no limit? And I think his response was $10,000. That seems pretty high to me. It's really tough to say. It's really hard because you should be planning for a pretty sizable downswing. So what's a sizable downswing in 1-2 no limit? I don't know, 3,000 maybe? 4,000? Can definitely happen. So I guess if you have twice that much, or maybe approximately twice that much, seems like you should be in good shape. So how much do you need for 2-5? Well, again it varies, and it depends on how much stress you want to take on. I guess I'm hesitant to sort of throw a number out there because there's always going to be discussions about that's too much or that's too little. More often it's too little. And some people are there's always gonna be people that disagree. You just have to assume that you're gonna go on a pretty big downswing at some point in your playing career as a professional poker player. So how big is a big downswing in each stake level? And how much towards the bottom of your bankroll are you willing to play through before you end up doing something else to have another income source? So I think that's really I really think that's the more important question, is how big of a downswing should I expect at each stake level rather than how big of a bankroll should I have? Hang on, I gotta try and fix this lighting. Not sure if that is better or worse or just super scary. Seems bright. All right, I'm doing the best I can here, but not exactly a production studio here. The bedroom that I grew up in as a kid at the parents' house. What can you do? But so where were we? So yeah, I think you can expect a downswing of a few thousand, 3,000 or 4,000 at 1-2, a downswing of 6,000 or 7,000 at 2-5, and a downswing of 15,000 maybe at 5-10, something along those lines. So you're gonna want to have some sort of a cushion in there. It's tough for me to give you an exact number for bankroll, but just keep those downswing numbers in mind. Lucky 14 Roulette on YouTube says, how do you separate your poker bankroll and paying your bills? Honestly, I'm not very good at this. I know some people like to keep 3 months or so of life roll in the bank account at all times. So if they go on a downswing, they can always rely on that money to pay the bills, pay the rent. I guess I've always just considered my net worth to take care of everything, the poker bankroll, the poker money, and the life roll. It might help some people. It might help them to keep the money separate. The way I look at it is, as soon as your life roll starts to dip a little bit, you have to naturally dip into the poker money to replenish that money. So I guess I might keep them in separate pockets sometimes, but it's all really in the same bag. So like I said, everybody's different. They like to compartmentalize their funds a little bit differently, but it's never really been my strong suit, I guess. Warren Bluffett on YouTube, he's got like some rapid fire questions going here. Favorite book? I guess my favorite book for a long time was a book called The Tao of Pooh. That's P-O-O-H. I'll put a link down below. Great book. A lot of life lessons in that book. Favorite movie? I think favorite movie, Snatch. Best place you played poker at? Favorite casino property would be the Wynn/Encore. Aria is probably a close second. I really like playing at Ocean's 11 in Oceanside, California. Just something about a beach town, you know? Just steps from the beach. Pretty good games almost always. What's not to like there? Do you see yourself playing poker long term or looking to transition into something else? Well, I started this vlog, so I guess I've transitioned into vlogging, so there's that. Yeah, I guess I've always been, not always, but definitely over the past handful of years, considering other options. Will I ever go back to the 9-to-5 life and take some sort of a steady job? Seems a little bit unlikely at this point. That's not to say that I wouldn't if somebody had some sort of an idea. It just seems like my skill set is probably more geared towards a less traditional atmosphere these days. Always kicking around ideas for startup businesses. My friend that you saw in the last video, he is a commodities trader in Chicago, so I know that there's a lot of parallels between poker and trading. Definitely considered something like that. So yeah, I don't see myself pigeonholed into the poker playing life forever, but who knows? You never know. A couple of people have asked me about my thoughts on tournaments in general. I definitely think that they can be fun. I've just never seen myself as a tournament player or grinding a tournament schedule. It's tough enough to kind of figure out how much money you're going to have in your pocket at the end of the month as a cash game player. The variance in tournaments is exponentially higher. But I guess what it really comes down to is what do you enjoy the most? And I think that's what you're going to end up being the best at. If you enjoy playing tournaments more than cash games, then read up on all the strategy that you can and see if that tournament life is for you. It seems like grinding tournaments for a living gives you a higher chance of going broke. Las Vegas might be the only place where there's just a pretty steady flow of daily tournaments, and there's these things like the Venetian Deep Stack that happen very regularly. Otherwise, you're going to have to be traveling to all these stops, and if you start breaking a bunch of tournaments in a row while you're mixing in all this travel, that's a huge downswing. So it seems to me like the risk is very high. Obviously, the reward is super high if you're able to just rip a couple of these tournaments. Much easier said than done, though. So again, a lot of it comes down to personal preference, and if you're able to take on all that variance, more power to you, I guess. One other thing about tournaments, though, a lot of these professionals, they seem to be clamoring for the high percentage payout at the top, the super top heavy structures. I'm all for making them more like a cash game. I think the flatter the better, personally. I mean, I'm not a tournament expert, so maybe I'm missing something, but you listen to a guy like Lyman, who seems to make a lot of sense to me. He talks about how when you have these super top heavy payouts, a lot of the times when someone wins something like that, they're yanking all of that money out of the poker economy and they're making a big purchase, or they're putting it away into mutual funds or something like that. If someone wins, I don't know, 100 buy-ins or 200 buy-ins, 300 buy-ins in one tournament, they're not necessarily just going to start pumping all that money into cash games and what have you, maybe once in a while, but usually not. Whereas if somebody wins a couple buy-ins in a cash game, that money's not going very far. It's all just going to cycle back into the poker economy. Someone has a huge score in a poker tournament, they might buy a condo, they might buy a car. A lot of that is not coming back into the poker economy. So there's a question about whether these high top heavy tournament structure payouts are good for the poker economy in general. Definitely up for debate. Mrs. McGravy on YouTube says, what are your thoughts on table image? Is there anything that you consciously do or don't do at the table? I'm not really much of a big talker. That being said, if someone talks to me, I'm happy to strike up a conversation, happy to engage them in conversation. Does table image matter? Table image matters to people that are paying attention and that care about your table image. So table image matters to people who care about table image. You might be the tightest player at the table. You might only be playing value hands, and you decide to go for a bluff against a guy in Los Angeles who he has middle pair. He doesn't like folding middle pair. He drove through Los Angeles traffic for an hour to come to the casino. This is his time to play hands and make pairs and put some money into those pots. He didn't drive all that way to fold. So your little table image of being the tightest player at the table is of zero importance to this guy. Now, are there other people that take all that into account? Sure. So is it something to consider? Yeah, it's something to consider, sure. I mean, if there's a guy who's firing away at every single pot and has had a lot of drinks, he's got a certain table image, and you might be more likely to call him down. But as far as your own table image, it's hard to get into someone else's head and what they think about your image. Badger Sports Service on YouTube says, what is the poker tracker app that you use and where can I find it? Poker Journal on the App Store. It's the way to go. Check it out. Use it. Use it often. Manuel Ciordia via Instagram says, can you dive into the concept of tipping dealers? Do you do it after every pot that you win? How much? Tipping is another one of those topics where it's there's no concrete answer on what you should or shouldn't do. A lot of people are just maybe naturally more generous than other people. I guess what I try to do is I will tip if a hand goes past the flop. So if there's a C-bet takes down the pot on the flop, I'll usually tip every other hand in that case. Or maybe if there's like If there's like a big 4-bet hand pre-flop, then I guess I might throw $1 in that instance as well. I definitely used to be an over tipper, and now I think I'm kind of average. The thing is that when you're a professional poker player, your tips add up big time. I don't keep track of every single dollar that I tip during my sessions. I kind of estimate it at the end of the session. Often it'll come out to somewhere around $10 at the end of the session. So if I look at my totals for this year, and on Poker Journal, you can switch between your net and your gross income, the total amount won. So if I switch between the net and the gross, the difference is about $2,500. Now that is including tips that after I win a pot, and that's including if I tip like a food runner or somebody like that. So that's $2,500 that comes off of my yearly income, and the year is not over yet. So you might think $1, you know, $1 every hand that you win, no big deal. You'll never see the difference that it makes. It depends how you look at it, you know. It definitely adds up as a professional player. All right, pretty interesting questions, I think. Maybe you agree, maybe you don't. I try to answer as many questions as I can in the comments. I can't get to everything, but I do appreciate you firing all the questions my way. Keep them coming. Let's generate some discussion, make this as interactive as possible and all that stuff. And yeah, let me know what else is on your mind. Keep them coming.